Good evening, everybody. Father Leo here, and I'm going to talk about a topic that is receiving a fair amount of press right now. It's been something on the minds of a lot of people, and it's happening in a lot of places. So I think it's time to take a look at it from the Catholic perspective and see how we think about it. My job is simply to bring it forward, to stir the pot, as it were, and then I trust it's up to people to hear, to listen, and make up their own mind. Especially Catholic people, make up your mind before God and be at peace with whatever you come to. Now, the topic I'm addressing is MAID. Now, MAID stands for Medical Assistance in Dying. Medical Assistance in Dying, MAID. And it's well known around, and people know about it. A few people are choosing it. Not a lot, but a few are. And I know for a fact that some Catholics are. So having said that, first of all, I want to talk about the context of this and then the application. In the background and the criminal code. Now, in the criminal code in 1892 said that suicide and attempted suicide was a criminal offense. Criminal offense. I can remember working in a parish and getting a call at night, somebody who was suicidal. And you get up and rush to their house or their apartment and either talk them down, if you will, or take them to the hospital. I never consulted the police, even though it was a criminal offense for them to want suicide. I think most people had arrived at the place where they weren't going to call the police, because what could the police do? Charge them? And then what? It's not going to help the person. So it was always a matter of how can this person be aided, helped, so they won't want suicide. So that was a big part of it. And then and later on, of course, 1972, they decriminalized suicide, assisted suicide. So in 1972, assisted suicide remained illegal, but the thing is, eventually it was decriminalized. And I think that was, well, that's the way it was anyway, because they weren't charging people. There is assisted suicide and euthanasia. And assisted suicide means that somebody gets somebody to help them to have suicide, providing the advice, providing the means, what have you. But the person takes personal responsibility for ending their life. And then there's euthanasia, where somebody is, because of their suffering, somebody moves or takes a direct action to end their life, but without the consent of the person. Euthanasia. So, again, that was kind of the way it was for a long time. But then things moved forward in life. Sue Rodriguez, maybe you remember her. In 1993, she had an incurable illness. Painful. She went to the courts, all the way to the Supreme Court, because she wanted a doctor to assist her in ending her life. unfortunately, the Supreme Court of Canada said, no, we won't do that. Can't do that. So that was that. Then, in 2016, MAID came into being. And the Supreme Court offered the government a 4-month extension in order to then bring forward a document. And that document is C7, which is before Parliament right now. It has been referred to the Senate, which is common practice. Now, what bothers a lot of people is the Senate really broadened the reasons for accessing MAID. They broadened it quite a bit. Now it's gone back to Parliament, and we'll see what they do with it. But they have to come up with something by the end of the month, because the Supreme Justice has ruled that they must. And so I guess it's sitting down there in Ottawa, and we're halfway through March, so they have to get busy. And but anyway, let's go back to 2016 and MAID. Even though it made medical assistant dying available to a small group of people, it wasn't wide open for anybody and everybody. A small group of people. You had to be at least 18 years old. You had to have a grievous and irremediable medical condition, physical or psychological suffering that was intolerable, and also they must be able to give consent. And that's a big one. They must be able to give consent. So even though a person might set it up, the very day they have planned, the last question they're asked by the medical professionals is, do you still want to go ahead with this? If they say no, it's called off. If they're not competent to understand, it's called off. So they did build a lot of safeguards around it because they felt that was really necessary. I think as well as Sue Rodriguez in 1993, there was another case which caught people's attention in 1994, and that was the Robert Latimer case. He had a daughter who was very, very physically disabled. She had been subjected to many, many operations, and more operations facing her. And I can only guess that he felt there was no way that she was ever going to be able to live her life fully. And that's when he decided the best thing for her, and probably for himself. So he set up a situation where she would be asphyxiated and she would die. And she did. He didn't hide the fact that he did this. He was arrested, charged, and sentenced to 10 years in jail. So he paid a big price for his compassion. And again, it was debated back and forth. Was what he did right or was it wrong? In his eyes, it was the thing to do. And like I say, then in 2016, it came in and it did have a lot of protection. I think that's the first thing. It did have a lot of protection in it in order to protect people so that somebody who was angry at somebody couldn't arrange their have them subjected to MAID. Just couldn't be done. So, but the Catholic Church, like I say, and even now, their bishops are speaking out that we need to really be aware of what's going on in Ottawa with Bill 7, C7, and be on our guard that it doesn't become too widespread in its availability to people. Now, the reality is, we have to deal with reality. And the reality is, yes, for Catholics, the Church is saying no to MAID. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, there is a subjective approach to this. The objective approach is it's a no-no. The subjective point is, are there theological, moral principles that come into play here? And the answer is yes. The first moral principle, theological moral principle, is the principle of double effect. Now, the principle of double effect means two things are going to happen. And what is your primary intention? That's what principle of double effect says. What is your primary intention? Knowing that a secondary thing is going to happen when you act on your primary intention. So, if the person's primary intention is alleviating of pain, intolerable suffering, that's your primary intention. The secondary effect, of course, would be your death. But the primary intention is the alleviation of intolerable pain. And that's certain to keep something in mind, you know. And it's a principle of double effect. And it's meant to be used. It's a Catholic moral principle. It's there. The other moral principle is the supremacy of a person's informed conscience. Not just conscience, but an informed conscience. And so a person, if they felt they might be requesting MAID, they need to do a little bit of investigating. Become learned in knowledge about moral principles. If necessary, consult with somebody for advice. Not just advice to do or to not to do, but what's the morality of this? And with an informed conscience, a person might be able to, and clearly some do, arrive at the conclusion that it's morally fitting for them to arrange for MAID. So it's there, and they decide to use it. And so they may. And so there's the two moral principles. Principle of double effect, the supremacy of conscience. And that's the church teaching. It's not if it's some fly-by-night. It's the church's teaching. Now, I know I'm pro-life from, well, that expression you've heard, from womb to tomb. So, on the one hand, we've been told by priests that you can't attend and minister to somebody who is chosen MAID. Well, that's the objective law. The subjective one is pastoral care. And pastoral care is motivated by love and compassion. Jesus said, love one another. And Jesus showed us that he loved everybody. Nobody was excluded. And so for a pastor, for a Catholic priest, compassion would be the motivating factor which would enable him to actually journey with somebody who was choosing and had chosen MAID. So compassion rules today. It's supposed to always rule today. Compassion or love. And so that's what you have in this particular situation. And certainly when Bill C-7 becomes law, then it's going to be very interesting to see how restrictive it is or how wide open it is. So that's going to be one of the crucial things. Now, there's also a worry here. There are groups of people who are really worried that if they widen the scope of this, that they will be at risk. You've heard the expression, the slippery slope. So you start down, then it becomes, faster and faster and faster down the hill. So slippery slope. And for one group that's really concerned about it are people who are mentally ill. And they're legitimately asking the question, well, let's go on so that we so widen that it will include people who are mentally ill. That automatically, if they're severely mentally ill, that they can be taken and subjected to MAID. It's a real worry with them. Let's not pretend that it's a frivolous thing. It's really worried. The second one is people who are handicapped. Are they going to be seen as throwaways? Are they? Now, you and I know that people who are mentally ill deserve treatment and love and support. That people with handicaps need our love and our support and our caring. So we have to say, wait a minute now, to our parliamentarians, try to build something that says, we've gone far enough. We've gone far enough. We're not going down the slippery slope. We really need that built in to C7. And then let it be done. And not keep widening out and making available. Or even, I hate to say the word, but compulsory for certain groups of people. That would be a terrible, terrible thing. And certainly with the commandment, thou shalt not kill, it really makes you, it should stop that. But knowing the world we live in, there's no guarantee of anything. But as people of faith and other people, we need to keep an eye on something like this. And if it starts to go down the slippery slope, rise up and protest and put a stop to it, because we love our people, all people, and whether they're mentally ill or got some kind of disabilities, they are our brothers and sisters. And they shouldn't even have to be living with this fear of the slippery slope. And some of them are. They shouldn't even have to be worrying about it. It should be the farthest thing from their mind, because they're protected by their government. And that's my thoughts. So this is a little bit about MAID. Let's see when C7 bill becomes law. Let's see where we are then. And can we live with it, or do we have to protest it? We'll soon know. God bless.